What's up, guys? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla stock. I'm going to break down what's going on with the overall markets, what's happening with Tesla news, what President Trump just said that's super important that caused Tesla to explode alongside the whole market. And what you should be watching for as time goes on these different charts. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. Moomoo is an amazing global brokerage account that consists of many exclusive offers. If you sign up and deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. Deposits $2,000, you're guaranteed 25 in total. Deposit $5,000, you're guaranteed 60 free stocks. The offer ends on June 3rd. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with Tesla. So, zooming out of Tesla stock, as you guys can tell, Tesla has this nice looking quadruple bottom like structure. We had a bottom here, 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 and here as Tesla's trying to base at this 215 area, which is a good sign. Tesla started this nice rally, and since then, we're trying to hold our 50 EMA. So, if we're forming a flag here, there will be some upside potential for Tesla. But of course, we need some confirmation to break 292. Now, President Trump caused the whole market to explode today. And keep in mind that if you compare the move the market made today to when Jerome Powell was speaking, we actually saw more volatility. And that just goes to show how President Trump also impacts things. So I'll show you guys that in just a second. But let's first talk about Tesla news, and then I'll talk about what President Trump said. So keep in mind, there's lots of headlines coming out that Tesla's Chinese-made EV sales also were on a decline again. We're still seeing headlines about this, about how they're down about 6.6%, which isn't way too bad. They are typically down in the month of April, but we're hoping for an increase in May and June. So we're hoping we make a nice comeback, especially as Tesla's trying to expand its scope of their cheaper EVs. There's been some news that Tesla's head in India is also going to be resigning. Unfortunately, it's not the best of news as well. This is making a lot of headlines right now. He worked with the company for about 9 straight years, so I do appreciate his work, but he's going to be stepping down as the chairman of Tesla's Indian board. So that's some news that came out. So I just wish him the best moving forward. Tesla's also going to start selling cheaper Model Ys in the US. They're going to cost about $37,490 with tax credits, assuming they last. There's no guarantee they last, though, but still good news. This should hopefully help their sales improve, especially as we get to the summertime when we tend to see stronger sales in the cars market. Now, as far as Tesla's going, Wedbush is saying it's going to be outperforming the market. And on top of this, the price-price ratio is climbing. I also want to add that Fridays tend to be green about 49% of the time for Tesla. We do tend to chop around a bit. And although May tends to be like a 53% green month for the market, we tend to be green over 80% of the time in the month of June. So June tends to be much stronger for Tesla. So please keep all of this in mind when looking at this data. So why did Tesla pump the way it did? There's multiple reasons. Number one, the news about the US launching its cheaper Model Y. That's some good news, at least to start things off. Secondly, there was news that came out involving President Trump, who made the announcement that he may have an announcement about whether the U.S. is going to be easing microchip export restrictions. This is what helped Nvda and Tesla to some extent. President Trump said, yes, we may be doing that, and it's going to be announced soon. So there could be some easing of restrictions on semiconductors, and that could really benefit Tesla and Nvda. So it's part of why we saw some upside. Not to mention even more news about what's going on with what President Trump said about China, potentially decreasing tariffs and factors just like that. So I want to show you guys something important. And this is the reason why I always talk about President Trump. So look at SPY right here, okay? And this does relate to Tesla. Just give me a second. Jerome Powell, when he was speaking yesterday, he caused this move like this. This is how much SPY moved when Jerome Powell was speaking, where my line is, the yellow line right here. And then when President Trump was speaking, we saw SPY make a move like this, okay? So see how there's a much bigger move today than yesterday. Jerome Powell typically causes lots of volatility, but sometimes President Trump could cause even more volatility than Jerome Powell, which is why President Trump causes such big moves, and which is why we need to really pay attention to what he says in a very unbiased fashion. Why is that? Because President Trump's policies on tariffs affects the Fed. Jerome Powell said that the Fed is going to be watching to see what happens with tariffs. They need more clarity before making a big move. President Trump's tariffs and his policies affect global markets. They affect Tesla. They affect every stock out there. And I think it's very important to remember that, okay? That's why we need to pay attention to what President Trump says. When Jerome Powell was speaking, Tesla was also choppy with the market like this, right? It didn't really move too much yesterday. But then when President Trump was speaking, we saw Tesla do this. It came down all the way down to 280. Then we saw this rocket to almost 290, a 10-point move up before slowing down again. So as you could tell, President Trump caused a bigger move here compared to Jerome Powell yesterday for Tesla, which is why we have to talk about what President Trump said that caused Tesla to explode. So the news that also helped Tesla is this right here. President Trump is announcing that he wants to keep a 10% tariff on the UK as they have a new deal. The deal is going to be very, very big. They want to cut taxes on British autos, steel, and aluminum. And President Trump said some very, very important things about China as well. So let's break down what President Trump said. I actually have the transcript right over here. Then I'll talk about Tesla stock and the overall market. So first and foremost, okay, President Trump said that today was a very, very special day. He mentioned that presidents in the past were wanting to make a deal with the UK. None of them were very successful. And they have a very tremendous deal for both nations. President Trump said it's a breakthrough deal with the UK. He's saying that he wants to increase the UK's access for ethanol, beef, and other products from the US. He also mentioned that they're going to be cleaning up the way in which things are done so that the UK accepts these products. He's saying that they're going to be fast tracking American goods and there will not be red tape. The UK, excuse me, is a very cherished ally. So that's what President Trump said, and that there's going to be a very, very great deal. President Trump mentioned that they're going to be cutting the tariffs on autos from 25% to 10% for the UK. They're also going to be decreasing tariffs for beef and particular products. They're going to be working together to produce steel, and they're going to be working together with lots of other things. He also mentioned that there's going to be a baseline 10% tariff, but President Trump said it's very low, and that the UK is going to be benefiting from this. He wants protections for US steel nonetheless. Then he talked about how the US is going to raise $5 billion in export opportunities for the farm sector thanks to the deal with the UK. And Lutnick is saying that there's going to be a lot of deals with the plane industry, the airlines industry with Boeing. So that's some very, very big news, at least so far. So please keep that in mind. Then President Trump was talking about China. He said that we could all play games, but what only matters is what happens during the talks. He wants to talk. He's saying that there's going to be a big deal with China. When asked about the tariffs on China, President Trump said that they can be lowered. They're going to be lowered. They're going to be looking to see a very, very good deal. And he said that there's going to be lower tariffs on China. He said they're already at 145% and they can't get any higher than that. We know they're going to be coming down. So that's massive, massive news. President Trump is saying there's going to be a deal with China and that we're going to see the Chinese tariffs go down. That's why Tesla saw this rocket up to about 290 a share. We also saw SPY push from 561 all the way up to about 570 when President Trump was speaking. So see how he causes so much volatility. His claims about China and the UK forming these deals is very important. President Trump said that he wants there to be a deal with China and that he wants a good relationship. He said that he wants to be friends with China, and that's good news because it affects Tesla, it affects the whole market. He wants to be friends with Xi. He did mention in the past they had issues because of the pandemic, but now things have improved and they are improving their relationship and they're going to continue to negotiate. So he's saying that China wants the deal. He also talks about how the US is going to have a large share in the chip making market and that we're going to be looking to see more tariff deals with more and more countries. He mentioned that China and Europe have been screwing over the US for years, and finally, the US is going to come out on top. On top of this, President Trump talked about Jerome Powell. He said he's always late and he's not happy with the fact that he did not cut rates, and he thinks that Powell's making a mistake. But despite that, Donald Trump said he does not care. President Trump is saying, go out and buy stocks now. So he's saying buy stocks. President Trump is saying buy the market, buy Tesla, buy all these different companies. President Trump is saying we're going to be looking for a big rocket to the upside. He said that about the stock market and that he is still bullish. So keep that in mind. President Trump is still very, very bullish on this market, and he thinks that things are looking quite good. He also said that if Jerome Powell does start to lower rates, there's going to be a big rocket to the upside. It's going to be like jet fuel. That's what President Trump said, and that things are looking very, very good. So that's what President Trump was saying. As you guys can tell, he's very optimistic about these trade deals, and that's some big news. I also want to add that a couple of days ago on Tuesday, President Trump said that he has a very, very big announcement to make. He's going to make a very, very big announcement ahead of his trip to the Middle East. He said it's going to be a very, very big announcement, as big as it gets, and that it's going to be really, really, really positive. It's either going to be made on Thursday, Friday, or Monday. So could this deal with the UK be the big announcement he's talking about here, or is he going to be announcing something else? There could be even more news coming from President Trump, so make sure you're ready just to be safe. When it comes to more news about the markets, keep in mind tomorrow is going to be Friday. We have very, very minor data, a bunch of Fed speakers, nothing too crazy. Right now, the market's at greed. It's making up the majority of sentiments. We're seeing momentum becoming less fearful as we're seeing some more greed coming in. The puts to call option ratio is dipping. The puts are going down because we're starting to see more call buying and a bit of a short squeeze. The VIX is neutral. And also, when it comes to more news, I just want to show you guys that tomorrow we actually have a lot of puts expiring. So if you look at this like this, we have over 267 plus thousand of these calls expiring, and we have over 745,000 puts expiring for a 2.78 puts to call ratio and 556 being max pain. So keep that in mind. On top of this, Peloton and Shopify had earnings. Peloton did not do as well, and Shopify did well. Coinbase did relatively not so great. They had very, very mixed earnings, I would say. They had a Q1 revenue of 2 billion below the 2.27 billion expectation, and their forecasts were cut, which is why the share price is down. Anyways, enough about all this news. Let's now just focus on Tesla stock and what's happening with the markets. I think Tesla's looking bullish. Okay, we have a very, very nice accumulation like structure right over here, and the full measured move is that if we could break 290, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 292 plus, as we're forming a very, very nice accumulation right here. So in the smaller time frames, it's kind of like Tesla's formed a nice base over here at 272, and I did say as long as we hold that, I'm expecting some kind of bounce, double bottom, dip. We could even consolidate a little bit tomorrow before it tries to push, but there could be another attempt for 290, if not 294. Looking at this setup, Tesla is looking more bullish. Also, look at the last day and a half. As you could tell, Tesla's riding this trend line up, making higher highs and higher lows. So I could see some consolidation here before it slowly uptrends for 292 again, as we're looking more bullish. So hypothetically, okay, we're looking good on the 30 minutes time frame. The 4 hours looking more bullish on Tesla. But let's go over these levels just to create more clarity about what's about to happen. So if we're bearish, if you want to be a big bear on Tesla, if you think some bad news is going to come, you want to see us lose this 280 area. If that fails us, I could be looking for a retest of 275 or so if we get bad news and if we dump. If we're bullish, you want to see us continue to make higher highs and higher lows. We already have a low here at 272. We came up, made a higher high. So we're breaking structure. So this is actually favoring upside if we break 290. We're looking for an attempt for 292. And if we could break this resistance right here, see how many times we rejected off 292. We rejected so much. If we break this, we're looking for 300 pretty easily on Tesla. So what do I think is more probable in my personal opinion? Considering it's going to be Friday tomorrow, we might see Tesla kind of consolidate like this for some time. But I do think we're going to be pushing for the 290s again to 292 in this range. Then we might consolidate first before we attempt to break out. It also depends on President Trump. If he gives us some kind of good news about another, tariff deal with India or some other country, that could also incentivize Tesla in the markets to get bought back up a lot more. So what I like about Tesla is the fact that we're holding our 50 EMA, we're forming a nice accumulation, and we're trying to make higher lows. So technically, we are looking a bit more bullish. So we are favoring that there might be consolidation tomorrow, but then ultimately we could be looking for a test of 292 on Tesla and potentially even higher if that breaks. So that's what we're seeing for Tesla so far. On the daily time frame, we're looking decent, but this shows we need to try to close above 286 to try to continue. There's also potential for that. When you look at the daily, we're actually looking a bit more bullish because this looks like a nice accumulation right here. And then if you get that breakout above this 292 area, we're looking for essentially 300 and 322. So there is upside potential. With President Trump announcing more deals, if there's going to be another deal with India or something else that happens over the weekend with the UK, with South Korea, Japan, and all these different countries, and eventually if we start to see the Chinese tariffs go down, which is what President Trump is saying is going to happen, if there's some kind of deal with China, that could launch Tesla so much higher. So keep in mind there are potential catalysts coming that could launch the stock market even more. So Tesla's looking more bullish nonetheless, and there is upside potential for the share price looking at how things are developing. All right. For SPY, I do think that there's a slight bearish divergence here. If you want to be bullish on SPY, okay, you want to see this thing basically break past 570. If we break this, we're looking for an attempt for 575. If you're bearish on SPY, you want to see us essentially lose the 560 area. This is gonna be very close to the 20 EMA. If that fails us, we're looking for 556. My gut is telling me that what's gonna likely happen is when you zoom out of SPY like this, right? It's bullish, okay? Ever since we got this breakout, we're riding this 50 EMA higher, and our full measured move goes up to about that 570 to 575 area. So what I think is going to happen is that we're forming a nice divergence, and this might actually come down a little bit. That's going to be completely normal. We could be retesting 561 or so, maybe even 560 like this, consolidate for some time. But then I wouldn't be surprised if SPY eventually tries to push for 570 plus. 575 to 580 could be coming next by either the end of the day tomorrow, if not next week, depending on what President Trump announces. So look for a bit of a pullback to 560, some consolidation, and possibly some upside as the most likely possibility. We're still looking bullish, but it also depends on what President Trump announces. For the QQQ, if we're bearish, you want to see us lose 484. If that fails us, we're dumping to 478 or below. If we're bullish, you want to see us hold above 490 to push even higher towards 494 to 500. So when you look at the chart, just like this, it's bullish. We had a higher low here, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. We're continuing to ride this up. So looking at this imbalance, we have 494 to 500 is our potential target. I do think we're going to be testing that. And there is upside potential as long as we don't get bad news. I think that we might sell off tomorrow for like 485 and consolidate. But as time goes on, I wouldn't rule out 494 or even 500 as our potential targets for a little bit more upside. On the IWM, we have a slight bearish divergence, but this does have upside potential. If you want to be a bear, you want to see us lose 198 to dump to 195. If you're a bull, you want to see us break 202 to eventually push towards these imbalances around 205. My gut tells me we could be retesting 198 before it tries to break down and push for 205 as our potential target. On ES, we're looking bullish. We're doing a good job at holding up. We're making higher highs and higher lows so far. If we end up breaking past 5750, we're looking for an attempt for 5800. And if we end up losing 5667, we're looking for a dip to 5622. Now, notice that when you zoom out, okay, see the yellow line? There's a yellow line here. We're bouncing, 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 bouncing off it. We're holding support, so we're still technically bullish. Now, President Trump can make more announcements to launch this higher. We might sell off a bit towards like 56.50, or even if we do test this yellow line for a small sell-off, I still think we could balance and reaccumulate, and then eventually we could start pushing for 57.50 to 5800 as our potential target as we look more bullish. NQ is favoring this high at 20,500. However, we're not ready to break out yet. We're getting closer. I do think that we could be looking for 20,000 flat as a retest. If we lose 19,800, we could be dumping a lot more, but I don't really favor that. I think we could be testing like 19,900 to 20,000, and then we could consolidate for a bit. But then later on, we're looking for an attempt for 20,500. For Bitcoin, we're looking a bit more bullish. It's trying to break out here. We could be looking for a retest of 101,000 before it tries to break out. But then we could be looking for an attempt for 105,000. For Tesla, like I said before, we're looking bullish, looking at the 4-hour time frame. Lots of good news with the chip news, lots of good news about the Model Y RWD cheaper model being launched in the US. And then don't forget, we have the Robotaxi event in June, which could also be very, very good for us. So the share price is looking more bullish in my view. For Nvidia, we're dipping a bit, but notice that we have this blue trend line. We're bouncing off this blue trend line. We could be retesting the 115 area. It's very possible we retest this. Then we'll see if we get a big bounce and start pushing for this 120 plus area to hit this area. If we lose 115, we're looking for a dip to 111 or below. If we hold 115 off the bounce, we're looking for an attempt for 120. So keep that in mind. For Apple, we're looking pretty good. I want to see us get back above 202. We could retest 200 to 202, consolidate, and then we could eventually start pushing for 204 plus as we have an inverse head and shoulders like structure. As long as we form a base here, we're looking for an attempt to rebound. For Netflix, if we lose 1140, we're looking for a dip back down to 1125. And if we end up breaking resistance right over here around this 1150 area, we're looking to go even higher. I do think that we could be dipping a bit before it tries to rebound, and it could start pushing even higher from there. For MSCI, we're looking bullish. If we end up losing 410, we're looking for a dip back down to fill this gap. As long as we hold support at 410, we're actually favoring an attempt for 430. So I do think that MSCI looks bullish, might consolidate before it pushes for 430. For Celsius, I do favor 34, and we'll see if it bounces off that or not. So I'm going to be kind of quick with the rest of these, by the way. Supermicro might be dipping to this imbalance around 31.5, and we'll see if we bounce. If President Trump announces, though, that he wants to truly get rid of those exports, or not get rid of them, try to ease restrictions on the exports, excuse me, guys, then that could be bullish news. We might dip a little bit to 31.5 before we consolidate and bounce. Palantir looks bullish, might retest 115 to 118 before it tries to bounce for essentially 124. Rivian is looking more bullish. Excuse me. As long as we don't lose 13.3, we're looking for an attempt to push for 14. SoFi is looking decent. It might come down to fill this gap towards 12.97 before it tries to bounce and go higher for the 13.5 plus area. AMD may be retesting 100 flat, and then we'll see if it bounces. I do see some downside coming, though. ARM is in the middle. It might be retesting 113 to about 112.5, and we'll see if we bounce. It did come down after earnings, so it might dip a little bit more. It's about 113 or below, and then we'll see if we get some kind of rebound. PayPal's looking bullish. Could consolidate before it favors 71.5 to 72. Coinbase is looking decent. There is a wedge forming here. As long as it holds 198, we could be looking for a rebound, so I do see some downside potential. Amazon's on a very, very nice uptrend. We're forming a bullish wedge here. But the thing about Amazon is we haven't broken our 200 EMA. Could be coming back down here before it reaccumulates and then starts breaking out for 197 plus. Meta might be retesting 591. We'll see if we bounce off that. I do see a test coming right over here, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. If we hold 591, we could be looking for a bounce. I want to see us break 610 to really continue. For MSTR, we're looking for 431. We'll see if we bounce off this, so keep that in mind. For Google, we're also looking for an attempt for a rebound. Now, I do think that with Google, we might try to fill this imbalance back up, but we're not ready yet. We might come down a bit and form a double bottom like this, and then we could consolidate before trying to push for 160 again. But I do see a little bit of a dip coming again. I don't think we're ready to really see a launch back up. Might consolidate first, and it depends on President Trump. He could launch us higher later on. UJT is favoring 26 as our target. The VIX is technically bearish. It might rebound a bit for the 23s before it continues to fall. It's still technically bearish when you zoom out, you guys can see. So that's favoring that the market's going to push higher. The 10-year is forming an inverse head and shoulders, and so is the dollar. The dollar might push towards like 101. Maybe that helps the market dip a little bit more. But as of right now, the dips are getting bought back up in the market. So even if Tesla does retest the 280 to 285 zone, it could still bounce and push for 292 as we look more bullish. Same thing with SPY. Even if we do tip a little bit, we still have upside potential in SPY and the QQQ. So, of course, guys, keep your ears open, keep your eyes and ears open for President Trump. He may be giving us more tariff deals. He announced that he wants to see the tariffs on China decrease, and he's causing a lot of volatility, so make sure you guys are ready. I'll keep you guys updated on what he says tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening. Please have a good rest of your day, and I'll be back tomorrow morning with another update. Thank you for listening, and peace out.